Hello, welcome. In this video, we're going to look at the basics of a tool called cron. And what this tool is going to allow you to do is schedule tasks on your machine to automatically occur. So if there's a report that needs to be generated weekly, you will no longer need to remember whatever time it's supposed to be generated to manually make that happen. You'll be able to tell your system, generate this report at this time. Or if there's a backup that should be happening on some predetermined schedule, and there absolutely should be a backup happening on some predetermined schedule, instead of you having to remember to manually run that backup, you can just set up a schedule in your system at this time, run this command that makes this backup. And yes, you could always run these commands manually yourself, if you're familiar with them, but you're pretty much always going to be understaffed. You're going to be working in an environment where there's too many tasks to do and not enough people to do them. So clever system administrators are going to automate some of these common routine tasks that don't really require us to think about the task. It's a repetitive, mundane thing that we do all the time. We can just tell the system, do this task at this time. And that way, that will free up our time for the things that actually need complex thought and our expertise. So one tool that you can use to do this kind of automation is cron. And it's going to allow us to set up a predefined schedule, well, a variety of predefined schedules to run certain commands at certain times on some regular basis. For example, if we wanted to get a report of or logs of what our disk usage is like every week, we could schedule cron to do that. We could even schedule it to send us an email this would be part of the report that you're writing, to send us an email when that disk usage gets beyond a certain point. That way we can have some forewarning when we're going to run out of space. So we don't we'll know about it in advance, and we won't have to scramble to try to find a solution. So the tool that's going to allow us to do this, well, a tool that allows us to do this is cron, which is short for chronometer. That is a time measuring device. And cron itself is a daemon. It's a process that's always running, so we don't need to start or run a command. All we need to do is just add to its lists of tasks that get performed at specific dates and times. When we do this, this is going to generate a file in the directory /var/spool/cron, but on a day-to-day basis, you will not be manually editing those files. We'll actually use a command that will indirectly modify those files. But as an administrator, we do need to know where those are, just in case anything goes horribly wrong and a file is completely broken. We could potentially go there and manually RM a file to get rid of something that was, well, horribly broken. And by setting up these scheduled tasks, this way, one, we won't ever forget to generate that weekly report, and two, we won't need to wait around until the system is less busy to run some specific command. For example, if we're going to set up backups to happen at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning, when, in theory, no one's using the system, we don't need to wait around and be in the office or SSH'd into the office at 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning. We can just tell the system, make this backup 2 a.m. every Sunday, and then on our next shift, the next time we're on call, or maybe if it is 9 to 5 Monday morning, roll into the office, double check that the backup was made, and that's it. So the command that we're going to use to actually interact with cron is cron tab, short for cron table. As a normal user, we'll be able to use that to interact with our own cron table. As an administrator, we will have the option to potentially interact with other people's cron tables. So some of the common options you'll see with this, and of course this is not the complete list of options this command has, are -E to edit the table. And this will open it up in your default editor. Personally, I use VI, but you may have your system set up a different way. And you'll be able to alter the contents of your cron table. -L is to list the contents of the table or to display them. That is, show them on your terminal. -R is to delete or remove the table. If you just want to get rid of it, maybe there's only one entry in there and you want it completely gone, or maybe it's a table that's completely broken and you want to get rid of the whole thing, cron tab -R removes the entire table. Now all of those by default will work with the current user's table, but as I mentioned, if you're an administrator, you can interact with somebody else's table as well, in which case you would just use -U and that other user. Demonstrating that I'm actually going to save for a later video, but I'll mention it here. Before we actually get to altering these tables, though, there's a little bit more that we need to know. What will you actually put in these tables? Well, in a cron table, every line is a scheduled task. And it consists of 5 fields that indicate when this task should happen. And the 6th, which is just the rest of the line, is the command that you want to have run at that time. And that can be as simple or as complex a command as you like. Potentially it could include subshell execution, it could include conditional execution, but realistically, if it's going to be anything complicated, maybe you should be putting that in a script and just telling cron to run that script. A bit of a warning here, if you are looking online for documentation on cron, you will find variants that describe 6 or even 7 fields for that scheduling information. I'm doing this video from the viewpoint of CentOS Fedora Red Hat, which uses a version of cron that has 5 fields for scheduling. On other operating systems, yes, they have different amounts of fields for that scheduling information, so just make sure that whatever documentation you're looking at actually corresponds to the operating system you're using. I can't believe how often I have to tell that to my students, but I do. So maybe you're on Oracle and that does use the 7 fields. Great, use the 7 fields for scheduling. If you're on a system that uses 5 fields, don't try to put in 6 or 7 fields for scheduling. Now, what are these 5 fields? I'm going to skip this top bullet point for a minute. We'll come back to that shortly, because in describing this bottom half of the slide, I'm going to cover a good portion of that anyway. The first of the 5 fields is the minute. That is what minute within the hour this task should run. And you could specify any number 0 to 59. 0 being on the hour, 1 being 1 minute after the hour, 2 being 2 minutes after the hour, 30 being on the half hour. Relatively self-explanatory. The second field is what hour within the day, and this uses any number from 0 to 23. So no, it doesn't deal with AM versus PM, because then it would have to worry about capital AM versus lowercase pm, or if somebody swaps case partway through. Cron just doesn't deal with that. It uses a 24-hour clock. 0 is midnight, 1 is 1 a.m., 2 is 2 a.m., and so on, all the way up till you get 11 a.m. is 11, noon is 12. Well, what do you do with a 24-hour clock past 12 noon? You just keep counting up. 1 p.m. is 13. 2 p.m. is 14. 3 p.m. is 15. All the way up to 11 p.m. is 23. And then, of course, midnight is 0. The third field is the day of the month, anything from 1 to 31. a little bit of a warning there. Cron will make sure you put a number in this field. It will complain if you don't, but it's not going to do any checking to make sure that, say, the day of month you choose actually occurs in the month that you choose. For example, you could schedule a task for February 31st. Cron is not going to complain. It's just going to be a very, very long time before your command runs. So, yeah, numbers 1 to 31, just double check that the month you pick actually has whatever number of days in it. The fourth field is what month within the year. You can keep using numeric values, so 1 is January, 2 is February, 3 is March, and so on. Personally, I kind of get confused right around September, October, November, December, because if you know your Latin, those are 7, 8, 9, and 10, but they're actually the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th months. Fortunately enough, cron allows us to use short-form words to describe the months. So JAN for January, FEB for February, SEP for September, OCT for October. Both of these will work. If you don't get confused by the September, October, November, December thing, great, use the numbers. But personally, I do, so I try to avoid them. And the fifth field is what day of the week. And again, this can use a numeric value, 0 to 6, or actually 0 to 7, with both 0 and 7 equaling Sunday. Or, in order to avoid having to remember a 0 Sunday versus a 0 Monday, again, you can use short form words. SUN for Sunday, MON for Monday, TUE for Tuesday, WED for Wednesday, and so on. So those are the 5 fields. There's actually a few more values we can put in there that I'll get to in a second. You type out those 5 fields to describe when your command is going to run, and then the 6th field, really the rest of the line, is whatever command that you want executed. However, when you're writing these commands, some of these values won't necessarily be meaningful for you. For example, if I want something to happen every month of the year, I'm not going to type in an entry for January, and an entry for February, and an entry for March. You can put in, as the second bullet point up near the top here says, an asterisk. And that means every possible value for that field. So if I leave the hour as star, this is going to happen within every hour. Sometime around midnight, around 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and so on, dependent on what the minute field is. So if it was 0 star, that's on the hour, every hour, dependent on, the other 3 fields for what day it will actually happen. If we wanted something to happen every month, again, we don't need to type in every month. You could just leave the month field as an asterisk, and that means every month. The asterisk is just every possible value for this field. You can get a bit more specific, though. You can use a hyphen-separated range of these values. For example, if I wanted something to happen on weekdays, I could do mon-fry, and that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If I wanted something to happen during working hours, I could do 9-17, and that's 9 a.m. through 5 p.m. If I wanted a specific set of values that aren't necessarily consecutive to each other, for example, I wanted something to happen every other month, I could do Jan, Mar, May, Jul, Sep, Nov. I feel like I missed one in there, but I was just rhyming those off the top of my head. Or maybe we're doing something Monday and Wednesday, MON, WED, or 1, 3. And of course, yes, the months and the days of weeks can be short form words. There are a few more slightly complicated things you can put in here. like division to try to make something happen, say every 15 minutes. That's a bit more complicated. I'm just not going to cover it. Maybe I'll do that in another video. We're going to stick with the basics for now. Now behind my slides here, which I, yes, deliberately did not full screen because then I lose my other screen that has my script on it. Well, not script, but bullet points of what I'm supposed to talk about. I've got a machine. This is actually an SSH terminal to a virtual machine so that I can blow that text up and make it a little bit more readable than the default terminal size actually is. And I'm going to use this for a quick demonstration. So as I mentioned, we can cron tab -E to edit our cron table. You might be able to quickly see a message that pops up when I do this. It's going to say there's no current cron table for this user, so we're just going to generate an empty one. That's fine. It's just because, well, this is a brand new machine. There's not a cron table on it yet. And yeah, it was very quickly there if you wanted to go back and try to pause it and see it, or when you run it yourself, you might see that. It's not terribly important. But here we are in our cron table, and the path at the bottom shows us this is a temporary file. So now we're going to put in those 5 scheduling fields. The first one is the minute, and looking at my clock right now, I'm just going to quit this so I can quickly say, oh hey, there's the message about there was no current cron tab. The current date, it's Monday, June 13th at 8:20 p.m. There's no way I'm going to finish this cron tab and explain it in time for 8:21, so I'm going to aim for 8:22. So, first field is the minute. So, 22nd minute of the, well, hour, 8 p.m. Remember, it's the 24-hour clock. 8 plus 12 is 20. Currently, it is the 13th day of the month. The month is June, and it's currently a Monday. And there's our 5 fields for scheduling. So I'm going to try to make this happen about a minute from now. And I'm going to try a nice simple command. Hello world. Save that. And it lets me know, yes, it's installing a new cron tab. And if I look at the time, I beat it by about 30 seconds. Great. I actually intended to be closer, but oh well. We'll wait out the probably 10 or so seconds left. Okay, the clock just flipped over. If I look at date, it says 8:22 and 3 seconds, but I didn't see a hello world. Well, maybe if I type that right, cron tab -L to list what's currently in our cron tab. 22nd minute of the 20th hour, 13th day of June. If it's a Monday, run the command echo hello world. That all looks okay. Well, there's a secret here. There's a reason I didn't actually see terminal output. The way I just used that particular cron entry to demonstrate how cron works, that's generally not how you're actually going to be using cron. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, the idea behind cron is we're setting up commands to happen on a regular schedule, so we don't need to be there sitting in front of a terminal to run a command. If I wanted to say hello world, I could just type in echo hello world. If I'm sitting there wanting to generate that report or wanting to make a backup right now, I can just run the command to do that. The idea behind cron is it's auto-scheduled for us, so we don't need to be there sitting in front of a terminal making sure this happens. This command might be running at midnight on a Sunday or 1 a.m. every January 1st or whatever other weird time. So any standard output doesn't go to a terminal, it will actually try to use the system's internal mail command to mail that to the user who owns that cron entry. Now, I found out the first time I tried to record this video, CentOS 9, which my virtual machine is, the minimal install doesn't actually include a mail server, so I had to install Postfix myself, and the default setup for cron is it actually tries to mail to root by default. But I overrode that because I don't think that's sensible. As root, I don't want to necessarily receive the email for everybody's cron entries. So I modified my machine to work back like CentOS 8 used to. So yeah, when you run a cron entry, what's actually going to happen is it sends you an email when that cron entry runs to let you know it occurred. And sure enough, at 8:22 on June 13th, cron sent us an email to an admin@demo, and if I look at that email, there's the output of my command. Hello world. That's great, go away. I always get that wrong, D1. Now, if you want to redirect the output from your cron command or cron run command somewhere else, you can do that. If you redirect it to a file, it will still work as normal. It's just output that would be going to a terminal or to standard out that gets emailed, because there's not going to be a terminal connected to cron. I often get a question in class, if I do happen to be logged in, could I make my cron entries display to my terminal? And short answer, yes, you could. Your terminal is just a file. You could write into your cron commands to check, if you happen to be logged in, and if you are, to figure out what terminal you're on and redirect out to that terminal, but don't do that. So, what we've quickly looked at in this video is the basics of how to use cron, what it's there for to allow us to schedule tasks, and how we can type in the basics of the 5-field form to schedule this is when I want a command to run, and then it's up to us to decide what command to run. I used a really, really simple echo hello world, but anything you could type into a terminal, you could put in your cron command, or you could put in your cron entry, or you could write into a script and then have cron call that script. This is an extraordinarily powerful tool for a system administrator. You can automate routine tasks to make sure they always happen so you never forget them. I will, of course, be putting together several more videos to go into some more detail about other aspects of cron. This really was just the brief intro of the basics of how it works. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.